to another episode of the UKEdPodcast from UKEdChat. I'm Colin, and this episode is being created at BET 2018 exhibition in London, so a packed show. This is the first of a couple of BET 2018 specials, and coming up in this show...
But my inspiration for coming up with the idea for Vocal Recall was the fact that I'm a teacher and I was sick of having to write comments which my students just weren't reading.
Well, I saw an idea years ago that just showed three numbers together, and I took that and expanded it to embrace the national curriculum.
But first, for many teachers, leaving the relative security of the job to set up their own business is a scary proposition, but for some, creating a much-needed solution to an obvious pedagogical problem can be the impetus to go in it alone, entering the world of self-employment. That's exactly what Naimish Gohil did when he set up his enterprise, Show My Homework, a comprehensive platform now supporting the teaching and learning of hundreds of thousands of pupils globally. I'm joined by Naimish here at BET. Welcome to the podcast, Naimish, and I'd like to start by asking you to map your journey that you undertook from becoming a teacher to where you are now as a business entrepreneur.
I guess, well, for me, the journey started in the classroom. I was an ICT teacher, and then within a couple of years, I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to become an assistant head teacher at the school that I was working in. And as part of that remit, my responsibility was curriculum, the infrastructure, and also a few other things like homework. So the problem of homework really landed on my desk. And I guess this was a time when the school that I was working in were using a learning platform that I found incredibly difficult to use. And so my view is, if I found it hard to use and I'm a geek, how can I expect teachers who are in the trenches to spend a couple of hours every day after school to try and learn and figure out how to use it and make it part of their everyday teaching practice. And so the light bulb idea came when I connected the dots, because I was always cornered by parents at parents' evening, or I never had the information at hand regarding our homework policy. So were we setting the right amount of homework, too much homework, too much homework, too little homework, were kids doing it? It was always a big problem. And that's when I thought, you know what, I can do something about this. And that's where really the idea of Show My Homework was born. And in the early days, the software in a nutshell made it really easy for classroom teachers to create homework activities that students could do on any device. So parents could stay ahead of the curve, students could have a bird's eye view of all their homework, teachers could save time by being able to reuse and share resources. And for the first time, we provided the school with this visibility to actually get insight into what was happening after school. And that seemed to resonate with a lot of other teachers outside the schools that I was working in.
So what were the main challenges in setting up as a business, and how difficult was it to take that huge step of leaving the profession and salary?
Well, I think having a very, very clear vision. I always think of the early days where, our product was a bit like a Ronsil. It solved a problem and it does what it says on the tin. And I remember vividly, many years ago, coming to the BET show, and I'd walk past, various stands, and it was just jargon. I had no idea what some of these vendors did, and that really stayed with me when I was thinking about, okay, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to make sure it solves a problem. And I just had complete conviction in that vision and that belief that this problem that we were solving was a big problem that could, impact lots of people. So at the time, I wasn't 100% sure that this was going to be a success, but I knew that if I didn't go all in, I would have ended up being bitter. So I knew that if I'm going to make this a success, I had to go all in. And thankfully, it's turned out okay.
You say that, but there must be tough aspects of being an entrepreneur. And on the other hand, there must also be quite significant highs and positive aspects. Can you just talk us through any of those?
Yeah, for sure. Like, if I think about my roles and responsibilities as a CEO, it's fundamentally in three areas. People, product, and strategy. And by far, people is definitely the most difficult thing. Going through, university, in your working life, you're just not taught these skills on as a leader on how to manage people, motivate people, understanding human behaviors. It takes a lot of time, and without a shadow of doubt, as we are over 75 people now, managing people is definitely the hardest challenge of building a business over the long term. I guess the best bit is by far building great teams. That makes me so happy when you can create a group of people, or when you can form a group of people that share your mission, really believe in what you do. And one of the things I've learned after we've hired so many people, fired people along the way, when you can companies don't really have values, people have values. And if you can align yourself and bring on people that share very similar values as you do, then I think you get to create that. You end up. It's hard to describe, but you end up. Work just becomes so much more fun, and when you can assemble a team where you all get along, where people say please, thank you, they work hard for each other. There's no politics. Everyone just keeps moving forward, and working in a startup is not easy at all. In fact, it doesn't get easier. It gets harder, and there are just many different challenges. But I always say internally, what will stand out and why over the long term, what will be the big differentiator is your brand and your people. If you have a fantastic group of people, you will definitely get to the promised land.
Do you see for any similarities between teaching and owning your own business?
That's a really good question. I think what teaching has really taught me is the importance of empathy. Like when in the school that I was working at, the IT results were really awful when I first joined, or in the first year. And one of the things that I did immediately was instead of talking down to kids, I spoke to them in a way where we were more or less on the same level. I gave them a certain level of respect. I treated them like adults. I recognized their challenges. I opened up all the IT suites so they could use it during in the mornings, at lunchtimes, when they had no people. I used to let them print homework out, and I think I really realized that the importance of having empathy, and that's a really big thing in our company. In terms of how people talk to each other, I touched on it earlier on, but I think that's a big thing that I took away from working in a school. I hope that's helpful.
What would your advice be to any teaching colleagues who are listening to this, who are thinking of leaving the profession and setting up as their own boss in any area?
I guess I would say number one, in education, you have to have a long-term view. If you're leaving the profession because you have a really good idea, but you're not passionate about the idea and you just see it as it's an opportunity to make some money, then I think that's a really flawed approach, because building a business in education, you have to have incredibly hard to get to a meaningful size. But I think if you're passionate about what you're doing, you're passionate about solving a problem, and you have a long-term view, and you're willing to make all the sacrifices, because there will be many, then I think it's probably the best thing you could do.
And what's the future holding for you and also the Team Satchel company?
Well, for me, I have a very long-term view of Team Satchel. When we started Show My Homework, we were just a logo, but now we've become synonymous with homework. And the plan really is I want Satchel to become synonymous with education. That's not going to happen overnight, but our vision is to keep helping school leaders solve school problems one at a time. And I think if we can do that, then we will realize our vision.
Naimish Gohil from Team Satchel, thank you for joining us on the UKEdPodcast. Now, Naimish isn't the only teacher turned entrepreneur we bumped into at BET. Recently, we noticed the usefulness of a new app that utilises QR code to provide feedback for students. Vocal Recall is free to download, and the founders of the resource were in the BET Futures section of the exhibition. Will and Graham manned their stand, and I started off by asking Graham to explain how Vocal Recall can be used in schools.
Okay, Vocal Recall is an app that allows teachers to record audio directly to pre-printed stickers. The app is completely free, and it is a tool which teachers are using in the classroom right now. So go ahead, give it a go, and see what you think. But my inspiration for coming up with the idea for Vocal Recall was the fact that I'm a teacher, and I was sick of having to write comments which my students just weren't reading. I experimented with audio, but I found the process was quite long-winded, and it was just too much of a faff. So we created Vocal Recall, which is a very streamlined process and allows teachers to attach audio to stickers within an
individual child.
We wouldn't recommend reusing them. You can always delete the audio that's already recorded onto a sticker, but the stickers are very, very cheap. You can print them yourself for free, and we would recommend just using a new sticker for each piece of feedback.
Well, how easy was it to actually build the platform that you're hoping, and what's the take-up been like?
Well, take-up's been amazing. We've had an exponential growth in uploads since we launched in May. The other day we had 895 audio files uploaded, going from down at 0 6 months ago. So it's pretty cool. In terms of how easy it was to implement, well, the challenge really is we've done it all in JavaScript in a web view. And so it's about getting the JavaScript file encrypted, the audio file encrypted and playing in JavaScript, and then uploaded it to the server without using too much memory, because the devices haven't always got a massive amount of memory. We want to keep the time down to upload it and encrypt it. And so that's been the main challenge really. But
So is it all secure and quite private for the teacher and the pupil?
Entirely private and anonymous, so you just need the QR code to listen to it, and if you haven't got that, then you can't. It's got the encryption key in there.
And Graham, what's the reaction been like and the feedback been from teachers who've been using it?
Everybody who's used it is raving about it at the moment. We've had a lot of people say this is revolutionising the way that they are teaching in the classroom, and it's not just being used for verbal marking. People are using it for languages, making interactive worksheets. We had a French teacher who did 3 questions written down, and then the next 3 questions were in French, and the children had to listen to the audio in order to try to understand. So it allows teachers now to actually have an oral and a written worksheet for languages, and this blew a lot of their minds. Greetings cards, says enough, sings happy birthday to someone. Audio tours in the corridors, really good for prospective parents. They can scan children's work and hear them talking about their inspirations. We're also really good in SEN schools and children with EAL, that's special educational needs and English as an additional language, and students that just have difficulty reading. They can now submit work via audio and also listen to teachers' comments. Primary school teacher can send a code home with their very young child, and their parents can hear it directly, what the teacher's been saying about them, maybe without having to hang around after school and catch the teacher. So it just allows really one-to-one support that wasn't previously possible without a lot of additional steps.
And Will, I'm assuming this is one of the early steps of the business. Have you been brave enough to think long term and how to develop the business and develop the app?
Yeah, sure. So the next phase is going to be our premium series. You'd have to pay to get access to the additional features. We're going to bring in streaming video so we can have longer audio and a quality slider so you could keep the audio long, but the file size small. And so we're just thinking through technical challenges at the moment, how to implement that and how to distribute the premium accounts to our customers.
So you were saying, Graham, that you were a teacher?
I am a teacher.
You are a teacher,
Yeah,
so how do you balance between the two?
I do this in my evenings and my weekends. So yeah, very, very busy.
Are you hoping to make the step away from the classroom, or you're hoping to keep a foot in the classroom?
I'd love to keep a foot in the classroom. I don't know, maybe I go part-time at some point, but I think one of our real strengths as a company is that I'm on the ground, I'm using the app every day in my work, and I think that's helped us really accelerate how we understand the needs of our users, because I am a user. Because I am a user.
Among all the flashing lights, all the noise and all the touchscreen technology of the show, I found myself in a corner of the huge Bet Arena and near the Steam Village. But one of the stands in that corner, which doesn't seem to be all singing, all dancing, is actually gaining quite a lot of interest and a lot of popularity amongst the delegates. And I'm joined by Margie and Dennis Brown, a husband and wife, teachers come entrepreneurs, who are trying out a new times table tool, which is quite useful for primary school children to get to grips with their times table. Dennis, just tell me a little bit about the product and what you're hoping to achieve here this week.
Thanks, Colin. Well, we've developed this whole school approach about 3 years ago. As teachers now running a tuition business, one of the biggest frustrations was trying to teach children anything in maths almost who haven't got an instant recall of their taking so much in confidence that what we've actually managed to do by giving them a taste of success, at least in one area of maths, is ignited their interest. So our approach is different because we don't teach children in tables in isolation. What we actually do is we teach children to understand number relationships, and that means that they are familiar with commutativity as well as seeing the inverse. And our card-based system is so exciting for children in a world that seems to be dominated by devices. What's really lovely is to see children actually sitting down and playing a card game with each other, and also for parents to be able to do exactly the same. So that really supports what's going on in the classroom when they're at home.
And where did the idea originate from? For the actual design of the cards and the concepts you've got there, how did that idea manifest itself into what it is now?
Well, I saw an idea years ago that just showed three numbers together, and I took that and expanded it to embrace the national curriculum. So actually we've broken the national curriculum down into 3 colour-coded phases. We deal with 1 times, 2 times, 5 times and 10 times in year 2, and then expand it through. And so our card-based system effectively means that as children play the cards, the number of cards they have to play with as they progress through the phase reduces, because they've learnt so many tables along the way.
Margie, it's your first time at Bet. The stand has been very popular. What's the feedback been from delegates as they've been popping to your stand?
Oh, it's been tremendous, because I think a lot of people have found it very refreshing that we have got a product that engages children and children play together rather than in isolation behind a screen.
And I've noticed when I've been going past that it's not necessarily teachers from the UK who've been making an interest in your product.
No, we've had a massive interest from abroad, from countries as far away as Lithuania and Moscow, so we wait to see again.
And I've already found out that there's schools using your system. What's the feedback you've been getting from the teachers and children that you've seen?
Well, what's really encouraging for us, we started just over 2 years ago, and we licensed our whole school approach, and we've currently got 100 schools in the UK that are using it. Because it's on a subscription basis, they relicense it annually. And at the moment, I'm really pleased to be able to say that we have something like about a 99.5% retention rate. So that's telling us that, it's working, and we get a lot of feedback as testimonials, which we put on our website from teachers. And also, we're running a pilot study with a school in Nottingham, which demonstrates the amazing progress that children right across their school have actually made.
Well, I hope the rest of the show goes very well for you both. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very
The rest of the show goes very well for you both. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's it for this episode of the UKEdPodcast. Another podcast about BET 2018 will be coming over the next couple of days. So until then, goodbye.